Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Exact 2, What You Need to Know as an Ink Supplier. Presenting today is Mike Gardner, a Technical Support Specialist at X-Rite. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Digital Learning Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. I just want to cover a few things before I turn it over to Mike. Due to the number of people that are attending today's webinar, we will keep everyone muted. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar panel, and we will have some time at the very end of this webinar to answer a few of those questions. Finally, this webinar will be recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email afterwards with a link to this recording so that you can watch it again. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike to get things started.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for taking a few moments of your day to spend with us to talk about the eXact 2 device. So the eXact 2 device is our next generation portable color measurement device for the imaging and media and manufacturing business. It was released earlier this year, midsummer-ish or so. And so I wanted to take some time to just kind of go through and introduce it to you and talk about how it compares to the Gen 1 eXact device and some of the new features and those sorts of things. So the new eXact 2 is comparable in size to the Gen 1 eXact. It's a little bit longer. It's tapered, so it's narrower for smaller hands. And really interesting is for anybody who is doing any color bar scanning, there is no longer a need to have an additional scanning chassis. And so I'll give you a moment to just kind of do a visual comparison of these two devices side by side. You'll also notice that the screen is a little bit larger, 20 to 30% larger, and so that gives you greater flexibility in terms of the surface area that you have to interact with data and also buttons. So the eXact 2 device is no longer a stapler type action. So it is a surface setting device, and here in this screen we're taking a look at the underbelly, and so it does appear a little bit different. You'll notice that it has some wheels, and so we no longer have to attach a separate apparatus for scanning if you're scanning color bars. It's also got LED light source, which is a departure from the Gen 1 device. It's easy to switch to and from the XP filter, and we see that it also has an integrated media flattener. So here we see the larger device display, and it is tiltable so that you don't have to look straight down on the device as you're measuring things. And in just a moment, we'll see how this can be really, really handy when you're actually taking measurements. It's a higher resolution display, and take a look here and understand some of the other features about the device. And we're introducing the docking station here in this particular slide. So yeah, the screen is tiltable so that as you're working with the device at arm's length, you don't have to directly look down at what you're measuring, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit as well. The polarization filter is easy to pop in and pop out. Now, what's really new and interesting for this eXact 2 instrument is it's Wi-Fi capable. So we no longer have to rely on USB cables for connectivity to a computer for any kind of software usage. Bluetooth is no longer an issue for us because of the Wi-Fi connectability. And just as an aside, we do have the facility to use a USB cable if you still opt for that option. All of us have been familiar with the docking station with the Gen 1 device, but the Gen 2 device is interesting because we're doing charging through that. And then we also have the calibration tile built into that. A new feature with the eXact 2 is this notion of non-contact measurement. So if you'll recall your usage of the Gen 1 and other devices in the stapler foot profile, we place the device on the sample and put it over the area that we're interested in measuring. And when we closed to measure, two things happens. First, your aperture of your measurement area disappeared from view. And then the other thing that happened was you would actually make contact with the device and the measuring head with the sample that you were measuring. And if you ever measured paste ink that wasn't dry, you knew that sometimes you would leave a smudge or otherwise a drag mark, for example, and that incompletely dried drawdown or print. Well, this new non-contact measurement alleviates that smudging and contamination of your print. So what about targeting in your measurement area? So this slide is showing us what you see is what you get image capture of that display itself. And what you'll see here is your aperture. The old devices had the little aperture on the foot of the device, and as I mentioned a few moments ago, when you went to close it to take the measure, that aperture and viewing of your measurement spot disappeared. So with our on-screen capture, we have this reticule, and it shows you exactly what you're measuring, and you no longer, and it doesn't disappear, so you no longer have to worry about, did I measure the right spot or come off the spot. So how does it work? Well, I mentioned that there's an LED light source, and so part of that is the measuring light source, but there's also a light that comes on in the device when you get ready to measure it, and that light stays on so that you can validate your measurement area, and then when you go to measure, that positioning light goes off, and then you have your LED that actually captures the spectral data. So here's another example of how that positioning camera helps facilitate ensuring that we have measured the exact spot that we've intended to. This slide also introduces the notion of a digital loop. And what that is we can zoom in, if you will, 1 time, 2 times, 5 times, and 10 times. Beneficial when we're measuring small spots. In this particular series of images, it allows us to look at the print quality, but it just gives us an opportunity to be able to zoom in and make sure that wherever we've measured, there's not any kind of trapping or any kind of contamination on the print itself. And finally, with regards to the image capture, we have the facility to save a picture of what we've measured. And then we can save up to 20 images on the device itself, but then when we connect it to eXact 2 Suite, we can upload those images and save them for whatever kind of archival purposes are important to us. We could also share those images with other folks. So what about communication with software? Yes, the eXact 2 integrates with our formulation and QC software. So Color IQC and IFS, the devices will communicate to those software applications. And of course, it will play nicely with color certs. And in this particular view here, we're having a look-see at how Scorecard, for example, on the device and in the software sort of align with one another. You're seeing the same information, the same reports between the two applications, the onboard application and also the software. Net Profiler. So you do have a new Net Profiler base for the device for the black and white calibration, and the card here that we see. And what's interesting about the eXact 2 and Net Profiler is that we can expedite the profiling capabilities because you see your color bar up there. We can just simply roll the device from one patch to the next. With the older devices, we had to pick it up and place it, and pick it up and place it. And with the eXact 2 and the on-screen image viewer, we can just simply roll it across those patches. One of the things that we've introduced with regards to the eXact 2 is this notion of an ecosystem. The ecosystem of our devices with various and sundry software applications. An additional software application is X-Rite Link. An X-Rite Link gives an administrator of an organization the opportunity to understand the fleet management of the devices within your organization. And so what we're looking here at is an ecosystem. It's an environment, happens to be our X-Rite applications and sales environment, and we can see all of the eXact 2s that are in this ecosystem. We can filter, incidentally, based on device type. And what's really, really cool is that we have the ability to see what's connected, what's not connected, whose device it is, the serial number of the device, and there are lots of little indicators down here that give us a view of the condition of that instrument. For example, warranty. Is there one? Is it in warranty? Is it out of warranty? The certification of the device, the annual certification of the device. Is it certified or not? Net Profiler. Is the device profiled or is it not? And do we have the current and most up-to-date firmware on the device? Again, it's a yes or no situation. We also have the ability to understand, again, the expiration or the condition of the warranty. And if we are approaching or have the warranty has expired, we can go into that device by simply clicking on it and requesting service. So it gives the administrator of a group of instruments an on-screen through your browser. That's an important notion too. Assessment of all of the eXact 2 devices in your organization. We mentioned in the previous slides that you have an indication of whether or not the current firmware is on the device. And if it's not, then from X-Rite Link, you have the opportunity to send or push the device from the browser to the device. And so what we're seeing here is a screen capture of what happens when there's been a request to push, and then the operator says download and install now. And so we no longer have to worry about what version of firmware is installed. We can see that in our display panel. There's also the ability to understand the net profiler status. So that would be an indicator light on the main screen of X-Rite Link. But you also have the opportunity to go inside by clicking on that device and looking at the net profiler condition and see a lot more detailed information concerning the condition of the profile, when it was performed, when it expires. You can export the last certificate, and you can see the profile condition prior to and subsequent to profiling. With the registration of your eXact 2 through my X-Rite, you'll have the opportunity to download and install the application called eXact 2 Suite. And that gives you the opportunity on your workstation computer to connect to the device, either USB or again Wi-Fi, and set up the device to accomplish what you're interested in doing, instead of having to do it on the device itself. And with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions or comments available.
Thanks, Mike. If you have any questions that you haven't submitted, now is the time that you can do so. While we wait for questions to come in, I am going to launch a polling question. If you are interested in learning more or talking to someone, feel free to answer this, and we will see if any questions come in. I see one here. Does the eXact 2 auto-calibrate like the old eXact?
It does. Thank you for the question. So the old eXact had the tile in the open position. The old eXact had the tile up against the measurement apparatus, and it would sit there and calibrate itself. Well, the eXact 2 sits inside the cradle, and if I can scroll up here and show this slide again. So as it sits in the cradle, the eXact 2 device is sitting on top of the white tile. And so it auto-calibrates itself in a similar fashion. Now, what's really cool and interesting about the eXact 2 in the cradle, the docking station, is that there's, beside the calibration tile, there's a QR code. And if you'll remember the rules about the eXact 1, that, or any other calibration, you weren't able to calibrate with a different tile. The eXact 2 experience is not the same. Any eXact has the capability of sitting in any docking station and calibrate based on that tile that's in that docking station through the use of the QR code. So yes, auto calibration with the eXact 2 is still there. Thanks for the question.
Does Net Profiler come included with the purchase of a new eXact 2?
Generally, that is a bundled situation, yes.
What are the wheels for on the bottom of the device?
Excellent. So let's come back up to the slide here and have a look-see. So the old Generation 1 device, if you were scanning a color bar off to the side of the print, you had to attach a different device that allows you to move as you were scanning the bar. The wheels on this device, the new device, eXact 2, mitigate the need to have a separate scanning shoe. Now, one thing I didn't mention but the question brings up the opportunity to discuss. So, well, you know what? If you've got wheels on a device, won't it move around? Well, in this picture, we see a button here. And this is basically a parking brake, if I can use that analogy. On the opposite side is another button, which is the measure button. So what happens with the wheels is the parking brake is always on, so that it won't slide around and drift down your production table. And then when you want to go ahead and position and then slide it across as you're measuring a bar, you simply release the parking brake. So that's what the wheels are for measuring color bars.
You mentioned it was easy to switch between XP and non-XP. How do you do that?
Okay, so again, let's go to a slide here. Well, I'll answer the question by first giving a little bit of background. So XP is a polarizing filter, and we use that for measuring film. A lot of time in the film manufacturing, there are defects through the extrusion process that would interfere with the polarizing filter. And so with the oldest devices, we had to make special considerations about whether the device was a polarized or non-polarized. With the eXact 2, we can see the XP filter here. It simply will slip into or out of the device. And so that helps facilitate measuring different types of substrate. Great question, thank you.
How easy is it to set up the eXact 2 Wi-Fi within a piece of computer software?
It's very easy. So what we would start out doing is going into eXact 2, and I'll scroll down to the eXact 2 suite slide here. And so I'm pointing to the connection options within the eXact 2, and we would set that up via the Wi-Fi so that we enable the Wi-Fi on the device. And then inside the respective software, when you connect to the device or select the device that you're wanting to connect to, it will pick up whether it's a USB configuration or a Wi-Fi configuration.
I see just one more question here. Does X-Rite Link replace my X-Rite?
Good question. No, the answer is no. My X-Rite is still your interface to your environments, your device or devices. It's still how you interface with Pantone Live, for example. Where X-Rite Link is different is that it gives somebody a much broader view of a bigger ecosystem. So it does not replace my X-Rite, it's a part of. Thanks for the question.
That was the last question I'm seeing right now. So this will mark the end of our webinar. Once again, everyone will receive a link to this recording. We will send that out tomorrow. So I'd just like to say thanks everyone for joining and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.